Hello, time for a Man in Gray book review. Today's book is Don't Know Much About Anything. Everything you need to know but never learned about people, places, events, and more, exclamation point, by Kenneth C. Davis, published in 2009 by HarperCollins. It's 318 pages. Kenneth C. Davis is a writer of popular history books. In 1990, he had a surprise bestseller with a book called Don't Know Much About History. This book went on to sell over 1.5 million copies, which is pretty extraordinary for a book about history. But Kenneth C. Davis came up with a very popular format. All of these books in this series are in a question and answer format. There's 4 or 5 questions followed by a series of answers. So that means that you can read them in kind of short bursts. And the history books are in chronological order. You can pick whichever chapter you're interested in of history, and then there's little bite-sized bits of information. And so this book became so successful that he did a whole series of other don't know much about books through the 1990s and into the 2000s. There's books on geography, don't know much about geography. There's one on the Bible. There's one on mythology, one on the American Civil War, one on outer space, and one on American history. This book, Don't Know Much About Anything, is the last in the series. Since then, he's done another series of books called The Secret History of, which, is similar in some ways, but, it's a different title. This book is a little bit different from the other Don't Know Much About books because, as it says, it's about anything. It's not just about history. It also covers entertainment. It covers politics, holidays, and various things like that. And the other thing that's different is it's arranged sort of as a pop quiz. The idea is, here's a pop quiz. Let's see how much you know about anything. And so there's usually 3 or 4 or 5 questions. Some of them are true, false. So he gives a statement, and you have to decide whether it's true or not. And some of them are just, basic questions. Is this true, and such and such. So let me give you an example. Here's one of the questions from the chapter on holidays. It says, which famous building celebrated its opening on New Year's Eve in 1904? Which famous building opened on 1904 New Year's Eve? And the answer is the New York Times building celebrated its opening with fireworks on New Year's Eve in 1904, and Times Square has been the place to be ever since. The lowering of the ball tradition came a few years later. So if you've ever wondered why Times Square, why does everybody gather at Times Square on New Year's Eve, it goes back to 1904 when the New York Times opened their office building in Times Square and shot off fireworks to celebrate New Year's. And so everybody came to watch the fireworks. And then after a few years later, they came up with the idea of dropping a ball at midnight. And it was a way of publicity. It was a way of publicizing the newspaper. And now people go to Times Square and don't know anything at all about the New York Times. But that's where it came from. So that's the kind of trivia that you have here in this book. These are light, books. They're not heavy, dense history books, which is, I think, part of the reason they became popular. There's some people that they're interested in history, but they don't really feel up to reading a 500 or 600 page history of the United States or history of Europe or whatever. And so these don't know much books are just right for those people. It does have real history in it, but they're in kind of bite-sized chunks and in the question and answer format. So they're kind of easy to read. These are kind of books that people who like to read a few pages before they go to bed at night, these books are ideal for that, because you can read 3 or 4 pages and then pick right up the next night without having to go back and try to remember something, because they're nonfiction books, so they're not novels, so you don't have to keep up with characters, and they're in question and answer format, so they're pretty easy to read. So if this sounds like an appealing book, or if you've read some of the other books, you might enjoy this one. The book is Don't Know Much About Anything. The author is Kenneth C. Davis. This has been another Man in Gray book review. Thanks for watching.